What I'd like to do in this brief presentation is to summarise what I've learned from leading farmers around the world in recent times. I hope it might give you a framework. It's a real summary and it needs a bit of interpretation, but it might give you a framework that you can discuss with your families, with your advisors and with other members of your work team. But it's a consolidation of a lot of ideas, but I have stress tested it with farmers to see that we've captured the major things, and I hope that it will be of value to you. So just so you've got an understanding of where I've got the information from to prepare this brief summary. I've been travelling the world for many years, visiting farms and looking at what leading farmers, how they're responding to all the changes in the world. I've been fortunate enough to work with a number of executive management programs for top farmers in Australia, New Zealand. We've got a course that brings together Australia and New Zealand farmers, in the USA, in Canada, and in the United Kingdom. So I've had a pretty good look at top farmers from particularly from Western countries, and what they're doing, what their stories are, and more importantly, what they're planning to do in the future. And of course, I've been touching base with some of the world's leading farm management experts, what they're thinking, what they're writing, what they're saying, and marrying that in with what farmers are saying to make sure that we're as accurate as we can be in terms of interpreting the way ahead. And all the time I've been looking to see whether there's something special that these leading farmers do that might make a big difference. So that's the background, and now I want to move straight into this summary. And as I go through, I'd like you to think about how your business scores in each of these areas. As we'll say at the end, you don't have to score 10 out of 10 yourself, but you need to find a way of scoring 8 or 9 out of 10, either by delegating or outsourcing particular aspects of your business. So number one, and I think number one is emerging as one of the biggest challenges, but one of the potential sources of gold for future farm businesses. It was okay in times when the pace of change wasn't so fast to say, righto, this is what this farm business does. We'll continue to do it. We'll do it as best as we can, this particular enterprise or combination of enterprises. But now the world is changing so rapidly that you really have to go out into the world and say, what is the world telling us about the opportunities and the risks? And really, we should be courageous enough to come back, see how our business stacks up in terms of what the world is telling us that we should be doing. Be fearless, question everything, and even get rid of sacred cows, which is pretty tough in some sort of businesses. But position our businesses to respond positively to the changes in the world, and if we do that, we'll have a lot more fun and a lot better businesses. So this planning from the outside in, not the inside out, positioning for the future, doing looking at our strengths and weaknesses in relation to what's happening in the world, and being prepared to change. It takes a lot of courage, but if you can do that, then you're really going to move your business forward. So what's your score there? How do you feel? How good are you at seeing what is happening outside in the world, domestically and internationally, and then positioning your business to grab the opportunities and avoid some of the risks? So that's number one that I've learned from these leading farmers. Number two, just plain good business is really, there's lots of evidence that businesses, people who have written goals, regularly reviewed and because conditions change, of course. So written goals, regularly reviewed, those sort of people do much better. And in a changing world, goals need to be changed according to how families change and businesses change and the world change. And there's, in the general population, there's been some work done, and it would seem that less than 1% of people have written goals which they regularly review. And I'd say, hey, can you be in that 1%? Because there's plenty of evidence that will take you to a much better place. So it's individual goals, family goals, business goals, and then a written business plan. And in Canada, for instance, some work done by the Farm Credit Corporation, less than 25% of Canadian farmers have a written business plan. And you might say, why have a business plan in a changing world? Well, the business plan can be a rudder when times change. It's much easier to change from a known planned position than if there's nothing at all and you've got to start from scratch and build up a plan very quickly when circumstances change. So goals, business plan is something that the leading farmers around the world do. And of course, tied in with that, they're good business managers. They just have good business management skills. Number 3 is a characteristic that comes out as well. They're really, leading farmers around the world are really good at what they do. They do ordinary things extraordinarily well. But on top of that, they monitor all the time. They analyse how last year went, and they're looking for continuous improvement. So they're really doing things right, the things that they do, and they squeeze an extra 5% of performance or cut their costs by 5% across the board, and all those little 5% add up to a lot on the bottom line, and it helps them to manage risk and all that sort of thing as well. So that's number 3. Number 4, and most farmers are good at this, but by gee, we're going to be really stretched in the near future, because there's another wave of new technologies coming. We're really seeing biotechnology and a whole heap of engineering technologies, and then a whole heap of new information management technologies coming together to give us some new power to be more precise, more effective in what we do. So these top farmers around the world, first of all, they make sure they're using existing technologies effectively. Often this means they've got to increase the scale or cooperate with other farmers so they can have state-of-the-art technology and technologies that are used effectively. They make sure any new technologies are not just bolted on as is, but they fit in with their farming systems to get maximum benefit. And they work very closely with researchers. One of the dilemmas for farmers has always been that rapid adoption of new technologies can be risky. But the top farmers in the world are getting very close to the researchers, and they're taking some of the risk out of early adoption of new technologies. And we well know that the big benefits from new technology are early in the piece, if they can be effectively adopted early. And the benefits for later adoption tend to be much less. And so the top farmers are learning how to be close to the researchers, be really early adopters, but with controlled risk, and therefore get as much benefit as they can out of new technologies, and certainly fitting them in with systems on their farm businesses to get effective use of those technologies as well. So that's number 4. Number 5 has been something of a revolution, particularly in countries like Australia and Canada, where we've had marketing boards and farmers haven't had the opportunity to really think markets. But the whole agriculture system now has changed from being a production-driven system to a market-driven system. And we really are now integrated right the way through, and we have to be for quality assurance, food safety, that sort of thing. We have to be integrated in order to deliver to our consumers the sort of characteristics that they want, and also in order to achieve efficiency in supply chains, because the real competition these days is between whole supply chains, not between farmers so much or different steps in the chain, but actually between the whole supply chain. So much more integration. That means we've got to learn much more about every step in the chain, and we've really got to turn around our thinking, because traditionally we've asked of our buyers, what will you do for us? When in fact now, if we start asking, what can I do for you? And if I add value and efficiency to your step in the chain, might you share some of that with me? And so it's quite a different approach. And we really, those of us particularly involved in producing commodities, have to create as much value as we can, but we have to make sure that value is maintained all the way through the chain and ends up leading to higher prices at consumer level, or greater value at various steps in the chain. So if we can do that, then as commodity producers, we will be rewarded better. And but to do that, we have to have intimate knowledge of every step in the chain. So that's our leading farmers now do understand, and they get out and they talk to people all the way through the chain. They understand what their requirements are, and then integrate back, and in most cases they get reward for doing that. So they're the first 5 steps, or the first 5 things that leading farmers do. Let's look at the next 5. So the 6th one that stands out when you look at what leading farmers do is that they really get good people around them, people to challenge them, people to stimulate them. These leading farmers use more advisors rather than less, and they often have links with like-minded people internationally, and we need that these days because we're in a global business. So and really the top farmers are sometimes a bit lonely because they're ahead of their neighbours and they're looking for people to talk to bounce ideas with, and so they get a group of people around them in order to really stimulate them and challenge and so on. So that's quite a characteristic when we look at what leading farmers do. What sort of a score do you have there? Do you try and do it all on your own? Do you actively seek out top people to work with and to help you in your thinking? How do you do it? What's your score there? And so number 7 is a really challenging and emerging idea for our farmers. And when we look at what leading farmers do in terms of growing their businesses, it's quite amazing. Even though agriculture is a high capital business and it's hard for family farms to get hold of that capital, leading farmers understand that you don't have to own everything. You can, provided you control enough assets to get scale and efficiency and so on, then you can grow your business, and if you're profitable, you can eventually you can own, you can add more assets that you own. But it's just so striking that the leading farmers are quite happy to lease, to share farm, to form syndicates to get state-of-the-art machinery across several farms, to have joint ventures where they bring in outside capital, all those sorts of ways of leveraging their own capital in order to grow their businesses. But of course, to do that, you've got to be very good working with people, with communication. You've got to have good management systems so that all the parties involved consider that what is happening is fair and good management. And so as these people these leading farmers grow their business, they've got to have the discipline to convert or transition from being operators. We all start out as being operators, and we love being operators. We love getting out there and doing stuff. But the nature of agriculture has moved that we really can make as much, we can be very good doing the operation, but we won't maximise our benefits and our income and our profitability unless we do the management side. And often that's working with external people, doing our marketing and all that sort of thing. So the leading farmers are very good at transitioning and knowing what their roles are as the business grows. And the transition can be from operator to a manager, and even in bigger businesses to the role of a chief executive officer. And in any case, in any business, the role of a chief executive officer has to be carried out by the management of that business. And what's the role of a chief executive officer? Well, it really centres around finance, it centres around choice of people, it centres around relationships, and it centres around strategy. And unfortunately, a lot of farming businesses, because they're dominated by the operational side of the business, don't get through to covering those sort of very important bases that increasingly are the ones that drive the profitability of the farm. And so this number 7 is quite a challenging area, but leading farmers are learning how to get the best out of the way family farms operate, but they're also borrowing good ideas from corporations and marrying the family and the corporate idea together to develop new management models that are more appropriate for the way in which agriculture is going. So some big challenges there for everyone, but it's just quite exciting when you look at what leading farmers are doing in this area of new management models and growing their businesses. Number 8 is about risk and volatility. Volatility is now a given. There's always been volatility to a degree, but it has increased. The world is a very nervous and fragile place at this time, and that's leading to knee-jerk reactions in all sorts of ways, in finance and in markets. Government decisions globally often change at the stroke of a pen, so there's a lot of new risk elements, and some of those risks may have low probability, but they may have big consequences if they happen to happen. And so we need not only to do the traditional risk managements of production risks and finance risk and market risks, but we've got to look at strategic risks as well. And we've got to ask, what if this happens? What if that happens? And really have some flexibility and plans to manage that risk. But the leading farmers are not too worried about that. They'll develop sophisticated risk management plans, but they recognise that volatility means opportunities. If you're on the front foot and you've done the what ifs and you've got contingency plans for certain things to happen and can move quickly, there are quite enormous gains to be made by using volatility to your own advantage. So it's not just a negative thing. So risk management plans, asking what if this happens and what if that happens, there is essential, and this leading farmers are continually doing that to make sure that they've got resilience in their businesses, make sure they've got flexibility to move, and they've thought about how they might move if certain events occur. Number 9 is another exciting area, and when I look at leading farmers, they've really developed the skills that you need to run any business, and therefore they can put businesses around their farm business. They may be related to agriculture or they may not be related to agriculture. I've just seen so many examples where they're using their family resources better, they've developed their skills, they've added businesses that might improve the cash flow for the business, because agriculture has lumpy cash flow, and there are a lot of off-farm businesses where you have relatively less capital, but you have good cash flow, and that can help support the cash flow for the farm business. So the leading farmers, more often than not, have some businesses sitting around their farms that use their family resources better, and also have the added benefit when it comes to succession planning that a family member that might not be on the farm, a business off farm, can be used as part of the succession planning for them without having to sell the farm or reduce the farm in size or put the farm under a big debt burden. So there are lots of advantages from thinking of adding businesses to the farm business. And services as well. A lot of the leading farmers, because they've got a really good image, they're attractive to their suppliers and their buyers, they add services of reliability and quality assurance and that sort of thing, and that can lead to just that extra 5 or 10%, which makes a big difference to the bottom line. And then number 10 is one of the toughest of the lot for everyone, and yet the most important, because agriculture now is much more of a people business than a production business, and we really have to get the people side of the business right. So our leading farmers are great learners. They make sure they're developing their staff, their family, because they recognise that as people develop, their business will develop. And in a time of rapid change, you've got to have a learning organisation. You've got to have people learning all the time. They're getting better at people management, but if they're not strong on people management, they might find someone in the business who is better at people management. And of course, they're tackling the toughest of all jobs of succession planning to make sure that the business is resilient over time, and that they're managing risk if some key parent or key person in the business is sick or dies, that there is adequate succession in the business so that the business goes on with people who are properly prepared to manage that business. So they're the 10 things that have stuck out to me when I've looked at literally hundreds of the profiles of what these top farmers do. But could I reiterate that you don't have to get 10 out of 10 for every one of those areas. And I've seen farmers do this. If they're not the best in the district at doing a particular operation, then they'll find the person who is the best and they'll outsource that operation. They'll get that person to do it. And so in a number of these things, delegation to other members of the family or other members in the business, outsourcing particular operations and so on, can lead to the score being nice and high without everybody trying to be good at everything. So sometimes it's better to concentrate on making your strengths stronger and outsourcing areas where you know you're not that good. So there's more than one way of making all this thing work. Now, just in addition to those 10 things, I looked at some personal characteristics of the leading farmers and their families. And the thing that stuck out, first of all, was just how good the teamwork was and is between the family members. Husbands and wives working together, using their different personalities, their different skills, to really make the most of the human resources. And when families can work together, it's absolutely wonderful what can be done. They can really be a V8, and these top family farms, there's plenty of evidence that they consistently outperform corporations in terms of, that is, non-family corporations in terms of their performance. As I've said, they're great learners. Their generic skills, that is the skills you need to run any business, marketing skills, business management, people management, information management skills, they're strong on those. They've often had good formal education that's given them the generic skills. They're also strong on the production skills, which are constantly changing with new technologies and so on. And they're really working on improvement, constant improvement all the time. they're forward-looking, they're confident, but they're controlled risk takers because they're growing their businesses. So there's always elements of risk in growth, but they've learned how to manage that risk. They have the courage to benchmark against their fellow farmers, even against non-farming businesses, against farming businesses in other countries. And that really helps them see where they are and can encourage improvement. They work very hard to build a positive image, because a positive image leads to people coming to them and saying, will you farm my land? Will you supply my business with your product? That sort of thing. We underestimate the value of reputation and image, and these leading farmers really work on that image. They travel, because it is amazing how often a travel experience has given a farming family an idea that is a life-changing and business-changing experience. And so they have their children doing international work experience, or the parents do it as well. They study international markets. They use travel, and they're global citizens all the time, sifting the world for ideas and opportunities. And finally, a characteristic that stands out with these leading farmers is they're passionate. They love what they do, and they bounce out of bed in the morning because they enjoy what they do. And that leads to the energy and the learning and the enjoyment and the satisfaction that leads to the performance that they have. So that's just a very brief summary. I guess there's no silver bullets there. A lot of it is just good, sound business management. Those 10 attributes that we've talked about are a given. And I'd be asking you to say, what are your scores and what actions might you take to improve the scores of your business? And what we've done is added a printout, a one-page printout of those 10 things that you can download and discuss with your family and work team. So one final slide to add just one extra bit that's really the oil that these top farmers have in their businesses. This is a photo of my wife. We were out in outback Australia, way out near a place called Birdsville. It's very flat out there, even though it's dry most of the time, but a little bit of rain and the roads become impassable. We've been camping out there a few years ago, and it rained. We were in a two-wheel drive vehicle, and really we shouldn't have been there. But we were travelling to see some friends on a big cattle station, and we'd been through all these potholes with mud and water, and we finally hit a particularly big one, and mud went everywhere and I couldn't see where I was going. I stopped the car to get out and clear the windscreen, and my wife, instead of sitting in the car and cringing and saying, I don't like it here, I want to go home, gets out of the car, puts both thumbs in the air and says, the road ahead is full of uncertainty, but let's bring it on. We can deal with it. And if you have that sort of attitude, on top of the skills that we've talked about and the characteristics in your business that we've talked about, you'll have a lot of fun in the time ahead. Thank you.